Dr. Andreas Wiele, as a member of the board of Axel Springer, you are closely watching technological trends. In terms of publishing, so AR and AI, how could they be also changing the content?
Well, it will be possible, or it is already possible, thanks to AI, to have machine-generated content of decent quality. For instance, in the lower football divisions, we were never able to write decent summaries of games individually by journalists, because it would be financially impossible to do so. That can now be done and is done already at Welt newspaper, for instance, by AI-generated content.
Right.
There's lots of type of this content that can be AI-generated, and that frees up our journalists to do more added value stuff, commentary, investigative journalism.
Yep.
The main point is you should not take the savings by producing AI content to the bank. You should invest them into more added value journalism.
Yeah.
And AR is still somewhat in the experimental phase. There the mass, for journalism, the mass applications are still some years out. So we need to be there with the right amount of investment and time and ideas to grow it when it takes off.
What about mobile devices like cars? Is that something that also plays a role in your
Sure. I mean, the car is obviously a space where a lot of people spend a lot of time. Right now, at least the driver is busy driving. But when he or she frees up time to consume media, we want to be there. We are working on some test applications with car manufacturers to try to occupy the space. We are not the only ones, so it's a healthy competition there as well. But one should also not forget that already today, everybody but the driver is totally free to consume media in the car, and a lot of them use their mobile device. So we will see how much new technology and new screens will truly end up entering the car.
Right. So let's maybe go back to the present. Still is very an exciting time.
Yeah.
What are your priorities in terms of getting content out to people? Things like multi-channel, omni-channel, personalization, content curation, and user-generated content. Are they all part of the game, or do you have other priorities?
Yes, they all play a role, but one should never underestimate the power of true original content. So our first and foremost goal, especially in times where the big platforms, Google and Facebook and Amazon, tend to aggregate more and more audience and more power. How can we truly differentiate ourselves? That's not only through AI-generated content.
Sure.
It's certainly not through cat videos, but it is through unique content. And especially in times of fake news, in times where there's more and more threats for the free press, providing truly independent, well-investigated, research, documented journalism is what will set us apart. We can create brands, and that will also allow us to monetize this properly, not only through advertising, but also through readers paying for content. That's our fundamental belief that one should never forget when all these new buzzwords or technologies come up.
Right. I personally find that, for instance, user-generated content used to be the not, I wouldn't say the holy grail, but everybody jumped on it, and it has declined in importance. Do you see that the same way?
Well, I think user-generated content is a source for news if it is used smartly, and if it is, like in most cases, curated. So yes, there can be lots of star sightings, there can be accidents, there can be politicians appearing somewhere, there can be interesting things happening. If the people report it to us, and we can put it into perspective and publish it after it being checked, then it's just a great new source of content. And obviously also smart reader and user debates, voting systems, they all can and should be integrated into curated content.
Yes.
But we think that the curation is something which truly should remain the driving differentiator for our business.
So we should maybe call it user-initiated content or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. User contributions are clearly very important, like any other source.
Are there technological inferences that you think are important or play a role, like big data or smart search that gets ever smarter?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, big data and AI somewhat go hand in hand. Because that's what AI is about, and there clearly publishers can still go a long way compared to e-commerce companies, because historically publishers did not want to know what their readers are reading, because it is part also of our understanding of the freedom of press that the reader doesn't need to declare if he what he reads and what he's interested in. Obviously, in order to provide him or her with the content she or he is really interested in, we have to do that a little bit, and there we have to do some catching up to do, while respecting, and that's also very important and a differentiator, always the privacy of the people and their right to dispose of their own data or not.
Right. So let's go back to the practical world. Can you tell us a bit how you managed to take Bild-Zeitung and Die Welt into the digital world?
Yeah, that was indeed a tough process, because by declaring, and that's what we did, online first, we had to break the year-old pattern that everybody works towards a certain print deadline, then the paper goes to the press, and then the content is kept exclusive until it hits the newsstands in the morning. By saying, look, this is not, we publish now 24/7, and readers want their news when they become available and not when they get printed and put in the newsstand. That was a big change. And the only way to achieve that is because in the beginning people think, hey, you're cannibalizing my own business. You have to there make very bold steps and try to get people behind you, and also fight a lot of resistance in the beginning. And there's not a lot of early gains. It takes some time to get then to make people understand that it works. And you need to put your money where your mouth is, so you need to invest in that area, and then ultimately, eventually, people will follow. It's a long process that doesn't happen overnight.
Right, but many publishing houses are struggling still to monetize their products in the long run. How did you manage to get in the profitable zone?
Well, first of all, because we took all the three revenue streams of a newspaper. The classified, the advertising, and the reader revenue.
But they're not tied together anymore.
They're not tied together anymore by one brand. They are partially tied. Reader and advertiser revenue is still tied together, but the classified revenue is not tied together.
Right.
But historically, that was a pure coincidence that you would have read an interview with Donald Trump, see an advertising for a car, and then find an advertising for your next job. They have nothing in common other than historically that they were all on the same paper. So it makes just more sense that they are now independent, but they are all old businesses. And the old newspaper industry always relied very heavily on classified advertising. Just it was under one brand. Now it is on the same internet, but not under one brand anymore.
Right. But how I still don't quite understand how the classified business, for instance, can sustain the journalistic part.
Well, it shouldn't sustain the journalistic part. It is now separate from the journalistic part, and it's a separate business. There's some overlap in terms of you can use data, user data to cross-fertilize your businesses that help. But the journalism, and that's actually a great part, the journalism has to be self-sustainable now. And there we very much believe that it will not only be the advertising, but against the initial wisdom of the internet is everything is for free. We believe and have lots of success that readers are willing to pay for great content because they recognize the value of valuable content, and that has a price. And you can see that in the development of the digital subscriptions, not only of our Bild and Welt newspaper, digital versions, but also of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and more European newspapers who are all switching to a paid or a freemium or a metered model. And the more publications do that, the more the readers will get used to it, and the more that part of the revenue stream will grow.
And the less free content is around also, right? The more do that,
absolutely,
the less free content
I think
everybody
there
can
always
get.
will be a share of free content. There's just content that is not valuable enough. I mean, the weather report, nobody will pay for it, at least not the temperature, perhaps some very, very local specific informations, but there's lots of exclusive stuff which people are willing to pay for.
Did you also kind of carve out a customer journey around the business of classifieds? Can I put it that way?
Well, we are more and more doing so, because actually the classified business, which is a fantastic business online, simply because of the fact that it is, if you own the biggest marketplace where all the people offer their houses or cars or jobs, and all the people come who looking for houses, jobs or cars, that is the main driver for a successful business. But that in itself is just a one-touch business, meaning the person only comes when he or she looks for a car or a job or a house, and the person who offers it, who are mostly professionals, they come frequently, but the other side only comes once. But then, once that contact is made, a lot more is to follow. You need to organize the job interview, you need to organize the process of everything. And that is something where we can help to make this customer journey in all of these businesses much more valuable and benefit from the whole value chain. And that is something which is the future of these classified businesses.
Right. So there's a lot to evolve still.
There is a lot to evolve, and there's lots of great opportunities to grow these businesses, to make the experience more valuable, so that for instance, if you look for a job, you don't just find a job listing, but you find really the one appropriate job listing that is good for you. And that then when you go interview, you are also already such a pre-selected candidate that there's only perhaps 1 or 2 and not 10 other people who are interviewing for that job.
How important is the role of Facebook and the likes going to be in terms of classifieds? Facebook has its own marketplace now where they sell.
Yes, it's Facebook Marketplaces is growing as a generalist classified market space. I think that the development will depend on 2 things. First of all, if truly people who come to Facebook for different goals to socially interact are also in big numbers willing to trade. That's something that still needs to be seen, but I think it is likely to happen, at least in some markets. I think it will happen in markets where there is no free general classified marketplace yet. There is countries, like in France, for instance, Le Bon Coin, where everybody knows, okay, I have my old bicycle or old piece of furniture to sell. I put it for free on Le Bon Coin, and people will come and buy it. So there is that customer need is satisfied. There's other markets where that does not exist, and where Facebook Marketplaces, because of the sheer size of its audience, might very well be successful. But I think it will not be a success in every market. It will be, in some markets, become pretty relevant.
Right. So you're refreshingly positive about the future of your business, and rightly so when I look back at what you managed to achieve. Still, do you see threats coming up towards the business?
Yeah, there's some threats. One threat is regulation, especially very concretely the upcoming and hopefully not final yet EU privacy regulation, which in fact will end up only helping the big American platforms, because all the provisions that are well intended to help protect the privacy of the consumer end up being truly a help for the big American platforms, who already have sign-ins and logins, and where people will always agree to everything these platforms ask for, while it will truly jeopardize the opportunity to provide customized content and also customized advertising for the smaller European players. So this is a very big threat. And then I think luckily the direct discussion is going in the right direction, that the role of the public television also should be limited in the internet, because as they by definition are a free service, at least the consumer is not paying directly, he's paying via his taxes or via other means of fees, that it does not prevent the consumers and does not prevent us from being able to charge for our content. So these are two threats, but they are more regulatory threats than market threats.
Right. So before we come to an end, what are the things you are looking forward to as a consumer and also as a professional person in the coming 10 years?
I think the blockchain revolution will be fascinating. And also the development of artificial intelligence. A lot of people are afraid that once there is general AI, machines will make better decisions than people. I think in most cases it's perhaps not a bad thing. And I think that overall we do not need to be afraid of the technology, but if we rather embrace it and manage it properly, it will be to our great advantage. So blockchain, artificial intelligence, but also a little bit further down the road, VR and AR will be very significant changes, and if dealt well, great improvements for our lives.
So Dr. Andreas Wiele, thank you very much for your time and for the interesting talk we had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.